What's the best example of it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it that you know of? Me. I worked at the same company for 10 years and had an excellent reputation. Some wild stuff went down and all the managers except for me had to be replaced. My reputation was fine at that point. Then we hired this crazy guy who was lying and saying strange things a lot. Then he was sexually inappropriate with a customer. I reported all of this to my boss. This crazy guy made up even bigger and more compelling lies about me. They believed him. I didn't do anything fireable, but they transferred me to a different location. I was told that I needed to shape up to save my job despite 10 years of maximum raises and promotions and glowing feedback. 2 days later, the guy was fired by HR because a customer reported him for sexual harassment. Nobody said a word to me, no apology, nothing. I quit in January. Fuck Office Depot. That's the last straw. I'm going to continue my apparently many-year in-progress boycott of Office Depot. But where will you buy? Whatever it is people buy at Office Depot. They sell offices, of course. Silly. Yes, but in a good way. He ruined a bad reputation. So, my cousin is special, which is to say, autistic. As such, he got sheltered as a child and teenager by his mother and came into adulthood as a spoiled, sheltered man-child who could barely function socially and wasted his money on stupid shit. Basically, he was like Chris Chan but didn't make videos of himself. He went incognito from 90% of the family when he was like 23, 10 years ago, and did his own thing away from the rest of us, and nobody complained about that. We heard about him getting and losing jobs, getting into fights with people, doing drugs, etc. But turns out it was exclusively the bad stuff that got around. Last Christmas, as it turns out, he was clean, no drugs, that spoiled, toxic attitude he used to have was gone, and he was cooking burgers for everyone at the family Christmas dinner. They were delicious. He'd apparently been holding down a steady job the last 6 years, hadn't been in a fight for about that long, and refers to his drug years as my stoner days and jokes about them. But the 5 minutes that really turned his reputation around? My sister started choking on an underchewed piece of burger. We were all talking amongst ourselves and didn't notice. But he did. He left the stove, ran over, started palm striking her in the back and got her to cough up the big lump of unchewed burger and bun. We didn't notice anything was wrong till the first strike. Once she coughed it up, he just says nonchalantly, "Yeah, see, there's your problem," like a mechanic noticing something wrong in an engine. Gesturing to the lump, he showed us all up that day and proved to all of us that we were completely wrong about him. Or at the very least what we knew was severely outdated and negatively biased. Edit. Jesus Christ, I commented this just before going to sleep and woke up like 10 minutes ago to see this is blown up. Thank you all. This is my favorite story in this thread. It's so wonderful and wholesome. TBF, the thread's title did not lend itself to wholesome. We had a guy on a super big important call where my boss was speaking, and some guy comes off mute in front of 300 people and says, "Don't get why we gotta be on these stupid fucking calls. They're all just talking out their ass anyway. They're just here to say, oh look." And it cut off. Way high up guy that was speaking, say Darian. Guy that was talking trash, finish that sentence for us. What have you got to say? Silence. Come on Darian. Don't be shy, more silence. Okay, moving on. I guess I'd take that over the incidences of accidental on-meeting masturbation and toilet flushing that have gone around. When my school flipped to online classes back in 2020, within the first week, there were already 2 cases of accidental nudity. Let's just say I always hopped on fully clothed and seated at a table like I was actually in class. Call me a nerd, but I didn't even want the thought of that happening to me. My friend taught first grade. Sometimes the parents would walk by in the background without a shirt on or whatever. They forgot the kid's camera was on. A minister in my hometown died of autoerotic asphyxiation. His congregation didn't even hold a service for him. His family disappeared, and within a week it was like he had never existed. That's kind of sad. Of all the problematic sexual tendencies that pastors and priests are known for having, this seems so harmless. Well, not harmless, I suppose. Harmless to other people at least. Except for whoever finds the body. Of course, scarred for life. Wait, all he did was masturbate dangerously. WTF religion was it? Churchies don't like masturbation or things that are generally pleasurable. They also don't like suicide, which this would appear as, though accidental. Probably, put the two together for one big haul of shunning. Director of a place I worked sent an employee a dick pic as a long shot. Employee was at a party where she promptly showed other people, wondering, WTF just happened. He had access to her phone number, but she had never willingly given it out to the director for any social engagements. Obviously, he went through files and found it and thought it was a good idea. The worst part was that it was a picture of someone else's dick that he was claiming to be his. Anyway, he came in after his weekend and, After a brief HR visit, walked out. Oh, his wife worked there too and had just had a baby. The workplace is like high school, so everyone knew what happened about 2 hours after he was walked out. Marriage and career ended in the speed of sending a text. Small big industry, and the news got around fast about the whole ordeal. At the time, the place I worked at was in CA, and the place that happened was on the East Coast. It wasn't even a former coworker who told me the story, but my new manager who had never even worked at my old place. I then asked a mutual friend, my ex-husband, if the rumors were true. He confirmed as he was right next to the employee who received the text and unfortunately saw it with his own eyes. Edit, how did they know it wasn't his? The guy was a larger dude, and the pic he sent with a leg shot was someone vastly more fit. How can somebody have low enough social competence to think this would work but high enough social competence to manage to get married and have a director role? I just don't understand what goes through the mind of a dude sending an unsolicited nude. Ask my father. 6 for 6 on successful startups, 0 for 3 on long-term successful marriages. Yeah, but what are his stats on sending unsolicited dick pics? How on earth did anyone know it wasn't his dick? Well, his wife worked there, so. Prince Andrew did a good job of keeping a relatively low public profile for years after his divorce. The work he was assigned to didn't require much TV work. Then, after the Epstein accusations, that interview must have been the most excruciating thing I have ever watched. I imagine he walked away thinking he had done a good job, and yet for everyone that watched it, it was the nail in his coffin. His PR advisor told him not to go on and then quit before it. Andrew's an idiot and thought he'd get carried through by his title. Narcissists actually believe they can talk most people into believing whatever they say. It doesn't help that they have grown up being surrounded by yes men who are well paid to blow smoke up His Majesty's anus. I've been around a lot of narcissists. Even the ones that could never afford a yes person believe they can talk you into believing anything. No matter how many times they fail, they are baffled when people don't buy their bullshit. I'm convinced it's a fixed trait of narcissists. I met and photographed him. I was a photog, on a station visit when I was in the RAF. I was just doing reported shots of him visiting a mess so didn't have to engage with him. My mate photographed an honors and awards he did where he was so rude and condescending to my mate that after he left, the station commander called up the photo section to apologize for how much of a bellend PA was. Well known by many in the forces as a total knobend for many years before he was exposed as a nonce. The Royal Protection Officers have nicknames for all the royals. Andrews is simply the cunt. This reminds me of that guy who sold his old company truck to a used car dealer and ended up seeing it in the news with some terrorists in the Middle East driving it. Mounted guns and everything on that thing with his business and his name painted on the side. Great advertising. He was forced to close shop after because of the bad rep. Sad when you think about it since he didn't deserve it, but great example. I'll never understand how that dude took all the blame for not removing the decal or whatever, while that dealer was somehow supplying the Taliban with vehicles and just skirted away blame-free by shrugging and going sorry we don't know how they got that truck. The dealer probably just sent it straight to auction. I have bought a couple of cars from online auctions like IAA and it's shocking how many times the people bidding against me on cars here in the western United States are from the Middle East. If I had not bought my most recent truck, a 90s Dodge, it would have ended up in the UAE. He wanted to remove it but the dealer told him not to as it might ruin the paint. I think he sued the dealer for this. If I remember correctly, that was Mark I Plumbing out of Texas. I legit felt so bad for that guy. He should have roasted the dealer since removing the logos would have been on them. He sued the dealer. The backlash on Will Smith for the slap. His and Jada's whole attitudes are pretty whack, and that slap just did it. I don't think they realize how pretentious they come off. That whole red table stuff is cringe. They lost any sense of normalcy years ago. I have way more respect for rich famous people who fully admit they are not like you and I, and they don't try to be. They couldn't if they did try. The whole Jennifer Lawrence I'm just like you guys, shtick always annoyed me. I also love this Key and Peele sketch because it's probably only a little exaggerated. Thank you for this. This is a documentary. My father grew up believing he was an honest, hard-working, and loyal man. While he was absolutely a hard-working man, finding out when I was 21 that he had another house, woman and child 20 minutes down the street that he went to on his frequent business trips dispelled the notion that he was honest and loyal. In another life, I would conduct a study, write a book, do a documentary on men who have two separate families. Not just men who cheat, but men who have two separate families. Of all the edged up behavior, this fascinates me to no end. I knew a guy whose father, lawyer, had a family a few miles away. Everyone found out after he dropped dead in his office. My wife's college classmate's husband, airline pilot, had a family in another city. I'm sorry about what you went through, and possibly continue to deal with. How do they have the time? Time isn't the challenge as much as the maintenance and structure are. A successful professional, lawyer, banker, airline pilot, can have a stay-at-home mom who handles the household duties. I'm interested in building the separate lives and keeping them from finding out. Names on the bills, credit cards, social circle, etc. Also, how do you help raise and, presumably, love your children knowing you have other children somewhere else? And did the other woman know he had another family? She did. I think she's just as shitty a person as he was. American Ninja Warrior winner Drew Drexel. After years of training, competing, and coming up short, he finally won in Season 11 and became just the third person to ever achieve total victory and win the $1 million prize. Months later, he was charged with child sex crimes. The court case is still ongoing, and he could face years in prison and massive fines. And to state the obvious, he will likely never compete again. Truly, not molesting children was the ultimate obstacle. It's always the really easy things that get you. It's depressing how many famous people do this though. Wow, crazy, never heard of this. I've watched ANW for years. It confused a lot of fans. He won, and then the next season he disappeared. He actually competed in Season 12, but they didn't air his runs. I'm assuming he didn't win. Otherwise it would have been tougher to erase him from the season. How about that lady who tweeted something racist right before a flight and by the time it landed she was cancelled and fired from her executive job? That took 5 seconds, not 5 minutes. It's got to be a record. Edit, here's the link. It was about going to Africa and not wanting to get AIDS, with a LOL chaser. Don't forget her saying JK, I'm white. My former boss in politics who was hugely respected within his party, and a secretly recovering alcoholic, got so angry about the opposite party winning the election that he fell off the wagon, and then drunkenly sent an email to what would be his new boss calling him a Mormon sister fucker. He was fired, and went on a bender for some time after that. Ended up having to leave the area and move to the East Coast in order to get work. I used to work for an humanitarian aid nonprofit. My old boss was the sweetest, most wholesome, super Christian woman I had ever met. A year after I left that job, I read an article about how she kidnapped 2 kids from an event she worked because she thought the father was a Satanist or something. He was an atheist. I would have never pegged her as that kind of Christian. Damn. The director of financial aid at the college I worked at posted an ad on Craigslist offering scholarship for sex. When he arrived at the apartment it was the police who were waiting. His wife worked at that college, too. She was pregnant and they had other small children. Different story, same college. A professor rented a room out to a former student and he got busted putting a camera in the dude's shower. 2 counts against him because the guy took a shower with his girlfriend. I'm sorry for that college's PR person. Change the motto to at least we aren't Penn State. Nowhere near as bad, but our high school DARE officer was arrested for selling drugs to minors. How are you supposed to know if the program is working, if you aren't testing the results? Those kids were supposed to just say no. Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor and hero of 9/11 to dripping hair, died disbarred drunk. He was an important part of taking down the mob. So sad. Would be funny if RICO was used on him. Italian mob anyway. Took money from the Russian one. Makes you wonder if he was just working for the Russian mob the whole time. There was a social media influencer, don't know her name, who was doing quite well with promoting her fitness wear brand. She was even working on deals with companies like Under Armour and Nike. Can't remember the exact brands, but definitely the heavy hitters. She was set to move into the $1 million income bracket, until a single post. She showed a picture of her and her family eating tacos with the following caption: "We miss Taco Tuesday, so we're having racial slur for Mexicans that starts with W, Wednesday." Instantly cancelled by pretty much everyone, and rightfully so. Brand deals shut down immediately. Followers left in droves. Pretty much killed her career in a single post. Had to Google that. Never realized that was even a slur at all in the US. Here in New Zealand, a wetback is a type of fireplace that is plumbed into the hot water cylinder so you can heat it using the wood burner and save money on your power bill. I'll have to keep that in mind when speaking with Americans. I'm Australian. Was aware of the slur but only because I saw it written on the back of a door at a rest stop in California. Wow, Californians must really fucking love their fireplaces. Zips. My mom ran a daycare for almost 20 plus years. It was her own business that she built up. Not only did I attend it, it was my first real job. And I fell in love with childcare because of it. We were very accommodating. We weren't too strict. Our goal wasn't to get a 3-year-old to read at a 4th grade level, but to give parents what they needed, making sure the kids were safe and well cared for, helping out along the way with potty training and weaning and such. We had such a long wait list, but still found a way to get the children who really needed it care. My mother sold it to a larger chain daycare when she retired. They made a bunch of changes, made a bunch of promises that kids will be reading. Potty trained by 23. Perfect little angels. Every child is different. You know why every child was potty trained by 3? Because if they weren't, they were kicked out. No comfort items at nap time. Because they were making little adults instead of babies. It took about 6 months and their wait list was 0. They were offering incentives to sign your child up. They could bring on workers. I think it downsized, but eventually closed. Someone led an MBA near a functioning business. How do you permanently ruin a business? Let business assholes get involved. At my old company we produced consumer goods and licensed lots of high-end pop culture brands. On a call with a team representing a very popular and iconic space movie franchise owned by the Mouse, one of our senior partners was sitting through a call on rights or sales numbers or whatever with like 20 people. Thought he was on mute and said something to the effect of, how much longer do we have to listen to this obese idiot jerk himself off talking about his bees anyhow? The call was abruptly ended. All follow-ups ignored. Maybe a week or 2 later we got a letter terminating all current and developing licensing deals for cause citing contract violations, and the company was effectively quietly banned from ever doing business with any brand under that massive Mouse umbrella. That dude lost them hundreds of millions in future business in about 15 seconds. When you first start you're told never to suggest pitching anything owned by the Mouse and then get told the story. The company was the worst job and culture I've ever had. Amazed it stays in business. Calls are like guns. The gun is always loaded, and your audio is always unmuted. Never say anything while muted on a call you wouldn't say openly to the face of everyone present. My wife is in tech, but she is like a caricature of a wonderful kindergarten teacher, just about as wholesome as humans get. When there is some crazy drama at her work, she starts freaking out that she might get sacked from something bad she's written in text or email. So I just start reading her wholesome work texts to her till she chills out. Lol. My point is that even someone like her is terrified of having her work emails read back to her in a courtroom setting. So the rest of us have to be extra careful. Lol. I've dropped so many mentions of unions and shitting on our CEO on Teams chats. I'm sure HR has a file ready to terminate me with lol. The Mouse does not forgive. The Mouse does not forget. The Mouse of consequences rarely arrives in a chill state of mind. There's a professor of chemical engineering at my uni. He's internationally acclaimed, has a very successful lab, has earned countless awards in his field and as a professor, and he wrote a textbook used by many different universities for their chemeng programs. A few weeks ago he was caught fucking his dog outside the restroom of a state park near the university. I have no fucking idea why. He told police he just does it to let off steam. He's been fired from the uni, his lab disbanded, and basically his whole career thrown away, all to fuck his dog? I don't get it. I don't fucking get it. What? Why? Imagine being a PhD student, in year 4 of your PhD, almost done, working under a brilliant professor's lab, almost done, and then, boom, you figure out why they call him Professor Peanut Butter, only to learn he prefers being over his lab. I was convinced this had to be made up, but I was wrong. It gets so much worse. Themis Matsukas, 64, was caught on Pennsylvania Rothrock State Forest security camera footage naked, save for a ski mask, a backpack, his socks, and hiking boots. Investigators say the state forest trail camera was set up in an attempt to catch suspected thefts from the bathroom. Instead of catching people stealing bags of hand sanitizer, it instead caught a man recording himself performing lewd acts with a dog. I know this has been said before, but the utterly embarrassing Fox interview between Jesse Waters and an anti-work mod. I'm pretty sure that was the exact picture of a mod most Redditors had in their heads before that interview. No. See, I expected unemployed, not working like 10 hours a week and complaining that's too much. Did you see the head mod who tried to defend them? A 16-year-old radical anarchist who unironically, in his fucking text wall rant goodbye, said he believed that 7 hours of school was a torturous violation to force people through, and that he didn't want to ever have a normal job. Ashley Simpson and the lip-syncing, jig dancing debacle. I remember hearing somewhere, pretty sure a Todd in the Shadows video, it wasn't the SNL incident by itself that killed her career. It was her Orange Bowl halftime show performance shortly afterwards. Like, she could have survived one of those, but not both a few months apart. I don't get it. It doesn't seem that bad. Maybe I've seen one too many shitty local punk bands, so this seems super mild in comparison. Lol. I imagine the bar is probably higher for a halftime show, especially for whatever the Orange Bowl is. Also, this is what that song is supposed to sound like. Colleen Ballinger. Yikes. Her ukulele apology had the Streisand effect. I'd never heard of her till that. Now I know she's a 35-year-old woman, asking kids for nudes and sending them underwear. Same. I don't usually keep up with internet personalities like her and had no idea who she was until someone I do follow commented on it. Ellen DeGeneres. She had a reputation for years of being kind and down to earth, until the accusations started coming out that she was a real dick to a lot of people and not kind like she portrayed. During COVID, she suffered from having too much space in her property. But my biggest problem with her is how she told the public Mariah Carey was pregnant after knowing she went through, which ultimately ended up being a miscarriage. Edit, bad thing happened after reveal. Is that what happened? I had thought she made Mariah admit she was pregnant on the show and that Mariah miscarried afterwards. Still not okay, obviously. That's exactly what happened. She kept offering Mariah champagne and she kept refusing. Then like a week later she miscarried. Jared. From Subway. From Subway. If Subway had done a background check on Jared before hiring him, they might have found out that he ran a porno video rental business out of his dorm room in college. All varieties of porn. He didn't judge anyone. It was a successful money maker which paid for his sedentary lifestyle, getting pizza and fast food delivered to his door. Then a Subway franchise opened up on the ground floor of his dorm building, so that became his go-to for meals and motivated him to lose weight. 2,000 calories a day instead of 10,000 plus a lot of walking led to a substantial weight loss which kickstarted his fame locally. Then with Subway nationally, he made $15 million just from getting fit and then tanked himself because he couldn't resist being a pervert. He's due to get out of jail in 2029 and will still have at least a few $1,000,000 to live on. 2,000 calories a day instead of 10,000 plus a lot of walking led to a substantial weight loss which kickstarted his fame locally. Then with Subway nationally, I shit you not, it's worse than this. He was stalking a girl who worked at the Subway under his dorm. That is why he started going there for every meal. They eventually transferred her to a different branch location because she complained about it. Jared found out where this new location was and then started walking to it twice a day. That is how he started eating better and exercising.